DJ Raedawn, what up, man?
What's up? What's up?
How are you, sir? Good to be with you. Thank you for your patience in scheduling a time to talk. I appreciate you.
Great to be here.
You know, it's actually it's a longer time than you think when I say, when, we reconnected or whatever, or connected. I said, no, you're on my list. And you're like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. But no, you was on my list for a very long time.
Dope.
2019 or 2020, you were at NYU, at an archiving conference. Martha Diaz put it together.
Oh, you were there.
I was there. I'm in the audience.
Nice.
And so a long time ago, I came across sort of your work and a little bit of your history. And so it has been a long road here, but, now I got cameras and stuff, so it's even better. So it's fine. So that all being said, please, if you could, introduce yourself as to how you like to present yourself to the world, if you would.
Word. Yeah, my name is DJ Raedawn, and as far as hip hop education, I've been teaching turntablism using my Turntablist Transcription Methodology for over 20 years. I invented a system of music notation for DJ music. In 1999, I had a book called The Fundamentals. I gave that to John Carluccio and Ethan Bowden, and then we did my second book on scratch notation called TTM 1.0. So TTM 1.0 was my second book on scratch notation. So yeah, for the past 24 years, I've been spreading my system all around the world, and now it's being used in schools in the UK, in the Leicestershire district, in the primary schools there. It's used in college dissertations all around the world. It's used DJ schools around the world. DJs use it all around the world to communicate with each other, to figure out new ideas, to remember their ideas. But it's also being heavily I'm heavily blacklisted, and I have no teaching position teaching my system, even though everybody's teaching it around the world. I just got denied this year for the next level program. They chose me in 2016, which was great, but this year my application just got rejected. So there's a lot of push against hip hop being a highly intellectual art form, because my work uses physics and trigonometry, calculus. And they don't want people to know that, even the hip hop press. That's why it's great to be on here, because I'm heavily deprecated by even hip hop press and any press in general. I was getting some press 20 years ago, but it wasn't even hip hop press. It was like Accelerator magazine, Spinning Time magazine. It's been in different things. Black Book magazine did a really good article, stuff like that. But yeah, so so my work is based in the physics of turntablism. So it's the first music notation language that's based purely on physics.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that. Obviously in your presentation that I saw, and I guess going back, to the beginnings of all this, a very heavy leaning on, like I said, math and physics, and it's not just, I guess, a visual representation. There's actually a whole kind of, I won't say convoluted, because I'm not a very smart person when it comes to those particular fields. But I understand that it could be confusing for some. They don't the royal they don't often want to give credence to some of the deeper concepts that, look, I was just at a hip hop studies conference in Europe, and it's, it still permeates. They are still not getting sometimes the complexities of this thing that we do. So that's why we're here. But let me find out some more. Let me go back to the beginning. So from what I understand, you touched upon it. You were developing sort of the system, and then you linked up with the other folks, and y'all kind of came out with this, I guess, next level. And then you split off and then kept going and doing it all.
Yeah, John was publishing the book at the time, so John helped me. So I did it in TTM 1.0, that book, that seminal book. I did all the designs in the book. John helped me with the publishing of the book and getting it out there. We got like truth.com back in the day to be a sponsor, and different sponsors back in the day helped us, produce physical free booklets that we gave out at different shows and stuff.
Nice.
And then Ethan Bowden, the industrial designer, he helped with the actual grid. Because when I had gave them my first book, my grid was all done in Photoshop, and I was literally like pulling lines and stuff like that. It was all bitmap. I wasn't even using Illustrator. So then when we did the second book, I did everything in Illustrator, and he helped. Ethan helped put the one thing that he did add in that book was just formatting and page 1, page 2, stuff like that, the formatting stuff. But then he helped design the actual the grid having a slope to it, because before mine was just a matrix of just a general grid, but then he added a little slope so that the word could be written on the slope at a horizontal, I mean not horizontal, at a little bit of a slope, instead of
Yep.
before in my book the word was just written on the side of the bar. So
Got
it's
it.
basically the X and Y axis.
Adding a little
It's just the movement of the
dimensionality to it.
record over time. So if the
Yeah.
record going forward, it's going up. If the record's going backwards and you're pulling back, the slope is going down. So if you're going forward, backwards, it's
Right.
just a wave, just like a regular sine wave.
The Matrix is incredible. The periodic kind of layout that you developed of like sort of all these different types of scratches that are found all through hip hop, of course, well, all through EDM as well sometimes. But the turntablism
Yeah,
kind
EDM,
of
everybody.
battle scratching kind of stuff. What was it that you were a DJ at some point, and then you said, "Hey, I need to start thinking about recording this." Like, what was the influences in your life that said this is not something like musically, like we have notes, we have notations, that this isn't really being documented, this isn't something that people do. How did that initial thought kind of pop in your head?
I would say I was at NYU. I went there in '97 and graduated 2001. So I think in '97 when I got to New York, I was just kind of scratching every day. I had met I had met David Torn, who was my roommate's dad. And David Torn is like an experimental guitarist.
Okay.
And he had taught me how to his son and him had both taught me how to use Logic. So I was, heavily using Logic and they taught me about how to use the envelopes in Logic. So, it's very similar to, envelope notation that's used in DAWs, where it's like, hey, you want the volume to go down, or even, you're probably using it on podcast stuff. You're like,
For sure.
you're tapering, you're saying, hey, I want the volume to trail out right here. So, envelope notation always used that, but it never had anything for faders or any type of thing for clicks or anything like that. So what I did was it was actually DJ Qbert. It was DJ Qbert had a contest. He started something called the Global Scratch Foundation way back then, and they had a scholarship. It was $1,000 scholarship. It was like $1,000 scholarship to anybody that can, help, take hip hop to another level, like that.
Right.
And so I was like, oh wow. So so I got all that together, and because I had these, ideas in my head. I was like, hey, and I submitted that to DJ Qbert's thing, and I actually won it the next year. I won the DJ Qbert Scratch Master Award. They had two awards, like the DJ Flair Award, Scratch Innovator Award, and the DJ Qbert Scratch Master Award. So I sent him like a video plus my system, and yeah, I won the award. They sent me $1,000, and they had me come to ScratchCon it was in the Yerba Buena Center in San Francisco. Back that was like summer, July or something of 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the summer of 2000. So I presented it at ScratchCon, and then actually, nobody ever let me. This gets into the cronyism politics of nobody actually let me present it, because A-Track presented a plagiarization of my exact system that day, and he at ScratchCon he admitted that he actually had seen my system first.
Okay. Okay. All
Which
right.
is
I
great.
got you.
So at least he did it on camera that he had seen my system, and then did a presentation at the ceremony where I received the award for my system.
Got you. That's
Yeah.
that'd be awkward. That sounded like an awkward day.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I was young. I didn't really I was just like, wow, I'm here, all these famous DJ. Oh look,
yeah.
DJ Iqbal. Wow, this is crazy.
Right. Let me ask you though, the importance, going back to how we started and where I saw you first, the archiving aspect of it. So it's great to do this, like from your perspective, why is this important? Obviously
Mm-hmm.
all the politics aside, all the things that could happen in the world of invention, that happens,
Yes,
I'm sure, and I hope that things have worked out and that you've gotten the credit you deserve, and that's why we're here talking about it. That being said, why is this important? Why should anyone care? that this is even happening? Who cares? Why?
So this is important because you know, I actually I very much agree with your thesis of like hip hop can save the world, save, you know, America and save the world, you know.
That one's
And
next. That one's
um
next. Yeah.
you know, I feel that
Yeah.
you know, because you know when people talk about STEM versus STEAM, I think, you know, for me, I'm more on the STEAM side because I think the arts are the foundation for every other science, whether it's
Right.
engineering, whether it's physics, whether it's literature, whether it's whatever. You know, you have to use art to draw these things, you know, to draw the schematics, you know, so,
Like I
you
said,
know,
the
it
visual
looks like a
representations.
little
Yeah.
schematic. And
Yeah.
you know, so the importance of this is DJ literacy. Like if you're doing math, you could do math in your head. You can just teach kids, you know, timetables, and but you're only gonna be able to go so far if you're doing everything in your head. Same with
Right.
writing. It's like, you know, they say Jay-Z was able to, you know, do whole albums just, you know, off
Right.
without writing it down. But you know, I believe he was writing stuff down, whatever. He's doing that for the camera for that particular album. But because it's gonna help you, you know, it's like obviously you could, you know, do everything in your head and not write it down and just bust out your whole album or do your whole
Yeah.
routine. But being able to write things down, that's called literacy. So
Sure.
I'm the first DJ, you know, pushing scratch literacy, and now, you know, hundreds of DJs around the world, if not maybe I'm sure a few thousand now, you know, not hundreds of thousands, not tens
Right.
of
Right.
thousands, but you know, in the 90s it was just a handful of people that, I mean, not the 90s, the early 2000s, it was just a handful of people that understood the,
Yeah.
you know, and then, you know, by now it's, you know, maybe over, you know, over a couple of thousand people are scratch literate now, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Always expanding and expanding, eventually be 10,000.
I like the two aspects that I enjoy is that one, and I've seen you do this because I've seen like a video of your workshop where you're teaching someone scratching, right? Because there's all kind of, you know, scratch teachers and or DJ teachers that teach turntablism from the basics, and you can use the notations to teach the physical movements because obviously people are visual learners, and there's that whole theory of multiple intelligences, and you might be a more visual learner, and like I learned how to scratch as you just do it like over it until you get a, you know, but to see the visual representation of you know, a flutter or a chirp or, you know, some of these different things, and you can say, oh, that's what I'm trying to accomplish. You know, I see it now visually, and now so that got to be an interesting way to teach scratching. Yes.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because you know, in the 90s, I was you know, having to just rewind DMC videos, like 93
Right.
DMC, and I think I had 95 DMC, and that was it. And I was
Yeah.
rewinding that. I was rewinding Juice. Juice is what really inspired me. I was like, wow, I want to do that. I want to
Oh
scratch
wow.
like that and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that was
So
pretty
now
accurate, right?
rewinding the videos, and even back then, if you're rewinding those old VHS tapes, people could be moving so fast you can't really see what they're doing. You can hear it, but there's different
Right.
ways to do the same thing. You know, a lot of scratches are kind of mimic scratches where, you know, you could, you know, there's 3 ways to make a similar sound or 10 ways to make something that sounds like the same rhythm. So even
Interesting.
if you can't, you know, you're trying to see Rock Raider's hand and it's, oh, wait, what's
Right.
going
Right.
on there? You know, things like, listen, Rock Raider could go faster than the cameras.
Let me interrupt you real quick. So this now the, you know, the digging in the weeds, the nerd, you know, DJ side. So you said there's 3 ways to make a sound, but it's so how do you record that with a notation?
No, I mean, like I could go da 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 da, and I'm transforming, or I could go
Right.
wa da da da, and I'm doing like a 2-click flare, you know, or
Okay.
you could go.
And it's a similar sound. So
And
so it's
I'm
the
using the up and
movement,
down. So there's different ways to make the same type of rhythm. I mean, like,
and you're able to notate each one of those
yeah, all the
differently.
differences
That's
in
interesting.
yeah, and
Even
then I
though
could
it might be fairly imperceptible to
Mm,
someone, you know, with their ear.
exactly. Yeah, and it's like us listening to Chinese. It's like, you know, Chinese has a lot of vocal inflections, like
Right.
go,
Intonations and yeah.
For any sound they can do those 4 different type of inflections. And you know, so it's the same thing with, you know, like, and since we're English speakers, we're not used to hearing all these inflections, but to them they can hear those really, really small nuances. So it's the same with turntablism, where most DJs are just going to hear like, oh, it sounds like he's transforming, but DJs that are in the know were like, oh, wait, no, I hear, yeah, he's doing some, whoa, he's doing this, he's doing that, you know,
Got it. So
a
it's
lot more.
those very subtle differences that
Uh,
make the notation important because again, you could be misrepresenting what they did. It's an actual misrepresentation of how they made that sound happen. But you're saying no, we're going to be precise about the notations. So teaching it one way is one, and then the thing I'm now leading into with that statement is the importance of archiving. The importance of archival. When you one of the things you said somewhere was, well, this is how you can record a like you record, but you can notate
Yeah.
a battle, a scratch, a routine, because it's never the same thing twice. It's always kind of on the fly. That's the great, impromptu nature of these things. And yeah, we can record it to hear it, and we can record it to see it. But here's a way to record it to show what was done.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. So, and it also works for people that can't scratch. Like, let's say somebody's disabled and they can't, they can't physically scratch. They can't physically DJ. They could, write down routines for somebody else or write something
Right,
down.
because it goes both ways. You could record a routine, but you could also program a routine, for
Exactly.
lack
Yeah,
of a
you can
better term.
compose. Like, so it
Yeah.
opens the realm for scratch composers. It opens the realm for,
Scratch composers.
people that are regular composers that want to incorporate scratches and learn the language to be able to communicate with scratch DJs or just
Yeah.
turntablists in general. And it's also, it's also a tool for, like you're saying, documenting history. And in documenting history, I started in that first book, the fundamentals. I didn't do any transcriptions of any things. I just did, like, just general, oh, I'm scratching this. I just talked about scratch techniques. But in my second book, TTM 1.0, I transcribed Rob Swift's routine scratching, like scratching, scratching,
Yeah.
scratching. Word. What is it? And like tit, da da da. What is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? Da 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 da. So because
Right.
I had to rewind his VHS 1,000 times back then. I was literally just rewinding it, and then there's one little part I actually messed up in it because at that time I wasn't really good at chirps, and this Italian DJ, maybe a decade later, was able to retranscribe it and fix that one little. He was doing some chirp flares, I think, and I didn't know how to do chirp flares at the time in 2000. And I learned chirp flares over the past 2 decades, but at that time I didn't. And he actually fixed it, and that's what's great. People can, look at other people's routines, perfect
Right.
things, fix things.
Sort of open source a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah,
to,
yeah, like an
yeah.
open source thing.
Yep.
And, so, I've been, putting it out there, to help people. And what I've noticed too is that, um, you know, back in the day, I used to, just practice 2 hours a day to, just practice all the time, every day. But I realized once I became literate, I stopped having to practice as much because, it's just like, if you know your ABCs, you know how to read, you can pick up a book 10 years later, and you don't necessarily, like, you might have been faster if you were reading, you might have been faster in college or grade school or high school when you're reading all the time. But the thing is like, it's just like riding a bicycle.
You
Once
got
you
that
learn how to, you
foundation.
can do it. So once you're able to be scratch
Yeah.
literate, your brain doesn't have to work as hard anymore because your brain is just focused on, like, hey, I'm a little bit rusty in that particular character, that technique, but I got all these other techniques down. But if you can't even visualize those techniques, it's just all in your head, and then it's like things can get merged. You forget stuff over the
Right.
time. You're like, oh, I
Right.
forgot I can do that technique. I
So it
forgot.
provides like a framework that kind of,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's pretty dope.
yeah,
What
so it helps your brain. It helps education. It helps you become a stronger turntablist. And now all the top DJs that are winning all the DMCs are literate in TTM. Like,
yeah,
K Swizz from New Zealand. Shout out to K Swizz. All these DJs are using using TTM, or at least cognizant of TTM.
yeah, yeah. You led into what I was going to ask next, like sort of
Ebert,
real,
DJ Kubert.
right, like say real world examples of how this benefits people, and you're saying certainly the DJs, but you mentioned also that's being used in schools. So how do you see that being being used? How do you see those institutions taking this on? Is it just a performative performance type classes, or is it a little bit more of theoretical stuff or historical? Where do you see it being used, and how do you see it being
Well,
transforming no pun intended,
yeah,
transforming that
that's
field?
funny. So let me first talk about hip hop education in schools in general, because
Sure.
like over the years, I've always noticed that, like, when people bring hip hop into class, it's always the English class, and it's always like, oh, look at Tupac, and they're always
Right.
bringing in Tupac, and like, Tupac's great, yeah, Tupac's great, but they never bringing in Freestyle Fellowship. They're never bringing in like lyricists that don't have like debauchery and stuff that's not any place for the school system. And I feel like there's a strong effort to demoralize hip hop, in the commercial realm, obviously, but even in the hip hop academia realm, most of the hip hop that's used isn't clean, and it's like, oh, we're gonna do a course on Rick Ross or whatever, and
Right.
it's just like, yeah, okay, Tupac's great, but there's so many, I'd love to hear, Mike and Nine or AC Alone or you know, or whoever, and
Yep. I
let's
understand
talk
that.
about their
Yeah.
literature. So,
Hmm.
when it comes to turntablism, my stuff is very rooted in, physics class, geometry class. There's so many applications for it, but obviously there's a big resistance because they don't, I personally am the first free person in my family. I was born in '79. So, all of my family members before me were, born under the caste system apartheid of, whether called Jim Crow and coming out of the slavery wars and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So, me being the first free generation where I could go to school with the top caste, the European diaspora, I've noticed a lot of there's a lot of resistance towards the black community, coming up,
Sure.
as far as inventions, as far as anything, our patents have been stolen over time,
Right.
uh, so many different barriers. So I think there's a big here in the US. Like, I'm in Atlanta right now, and I'm not gonna, I got a 2-year-old. I'm not gonna put my kid in the schools here. I'm gonna be homeschooling him because,
Mm,
the kids can't read here. You know what I'm saying?
right.
All over the nation. It's not just a Georgia
No, for
problem.
sure. For
All
sure.
over the
Yeah.
nation, it's just the school systems are horrible. And, so if you have horrible school systems that can't even read, they're just like, hey, we're trying to get these kids to even read. So, of course, they're not gonna bring in, turntablist geometry and turntablist physics and algebra and trigonometry and stuff that can relate to their culture that's gonna help them, even though it obviously helped them.
Sure. We
But
talk
in
about
the
this all the time.
UK, it's different.
All this stuff works. It has receipts,
Yeah,
but
exactly. But then you go
yeah.
to the UK, and
Right.
DJ culture is part of their culture. Like, you go to a
Yeah.
museum in the EU, and it's like, oh, there's a DJ playing at the museum. So for
That's
them,
right.
DJing, they respect DJing as an art form. So now in the light, like the school district I was telling you about, the Leicestershire district, they actually allow people to have the turntable as an instrument now. So it's like you can go,
Mm,
hey, I want to be a trombonist. That's my major instrument, or I want to be a turntablist. That's I want the turntable as my instrument.
that's
So
great.
like, here in America, all the kids are into the trap and all that type of stuff in the public schools, private schools too. And obviously, if they were able to bring the clean literature, because obviously you can't bring Young Thug music into the classroom,
Sure.
but there's people that are, it's like, oh, there's people that are current rappers that are out right now making new albums, that you could bring their work in the classroom
Yeah.
and relate it to the students and teach them, literary techniques, through hip hop science. So
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think I think hip hop education will be the future of American education, and possibly even global education in the future, because kids, like for me, I remember my teacher said I'll get extra credit if I could remember this Chaucer thing. This was in high school, and I was like, man, I was trying to memorize it. I can't memorize this, so I made it into rap form, and I was like, oh,
Sure.
I'm like April with the somersault, the pierce through the rote or something,
Right.
and and I was able to memorize it and get the extra credit just because I made a rap out of it. And
Sure.
then I just thought to myself, was like, there's, how you're saying, there's different types of learning, and the kids that aren't able to pass these standardized tests, they can, if you ask them to recite, some, Thugger lyrics,
Every
they can
single
recite
one.
100 songs. They can recite
Yep.
100 Drake songs, 100 songs. They have all these things stored in their head,
Yep.
but they've never seen that written on the classroom wall. They've never
Right.
seen it. So I have another system called Lyrical Transcription
I
Methodology
was
that I
gonna ask you
created
about that. Yeah.
for rapping, that kind of came out of TTM when I was transcribing. I think I was transcribing like the this Blondie thing, and but it kind of came out of that, maybe the Fab Five Freddy says everything's fly or something like that, like
Yep.
Grandmaster Flash and the Wheels of Steels.
Hmm.
And back to the transcribing thing of stuff through history. I started with the Rob Swift thing, and maybe I've done like 15 routines over time, or probably less. I had a column in Scratch magazine around 2005 where I was transcribing different classic routines over the years.
Yeah.
So like I did Portishead, I
Oh, nice.
Portishead Only You, I've transcribed. a couple of Premier tracks, DJ Premier's, he's, one of the best as far as producers and turntablists,
Yeah.
even Dr. Dre's a turntablist, he's the richest turntablist, in the world.
That's right. I'd love to, if you see me talk about this stuff all the time. Obviously, those techniques work. They work across the board, but they do work. Perhaps, a lot of times people say, well, all the young little black kids, they'll learn that way, and that's great because obviously, yes, if you can uplift those communities which have been traditionally underserved and under-resourced and underloved by the American education system, that's great. It's necessary and it's needed, and it's the most important part of this. But also, like, anyone can learn this, and anyone could have fun doing this, and anyone could be introduced to these concepts through this. You like you said, London. You put a turntable in front of some English kid, and all of a sudden they're making these connections in their head. So
Yes,
we know that it works.
boys and girls, and the girls were into it even more.
100%. So just get
Muslim, everybody, all Indian.
It's universal. It's universal.
People from around the world, and right now in the UK, learning scratch notation in school. So they're learning. They're drawing the trigonometry waves at the same time.
Right. I think that's brilliant.
That's what calculus is.
It makes a lot of sense to me.
Calculus is just when you're cutting up waves, and most schools don't even have calculus programs. But I believe that kids can learn anything at any age. I don't believe in age appropriate education. I believe that if you can, there's always some way to introduce any concept to a kid of any age. They might not understand the details of it, but you can teach them vocabulary of it. You can teach them all types of things.
The earlier the better, to get some of these influences in their little brains. Before we get out of here, I did want to ask you, just give me an idea of what the lyrical transcription thing does, because from what I understand, now we're talking, you can read lyrics, but this is how you can hear written lyrics by, notating the intonations and the inflections and all the things.
Right. So to date, we have classical music notation to help us do lyrics. Like, let's say you want to, most people, it came out of the monastic tradition, right? Classical music. So it was, it was designed to read two things at once, where you're reading the words, and then you have the little, you have the notes above it, or below it, whether we way, like if somebody's at church or, and something like that, and they're reading hymns, so that's what it was designed for, and those notes were very long notes, like monks back in the day, like, right. So it's very simple, very notes. So by the time, Coltrane and Gillespie and people started going super fast and going, it's like, you can draw that, with classical notation, but classical notation is kind of a coded language. It's not intuitive, it's coded. And anytime you're learning something coded, it's a form of encryption, and if you're trying to educate, you don't want to educate people with encrypted things. It's like, imagine you had a keyboard if you didn't have the letters on your keyboard, like, it's like, if you know how to type, you don't need the letters, but having the letters there is very, very helpful,
I got you.
So my system is basically very, very simple. It's just stretching the words over time, over an actual graph, so if the word a, somebody's like a, but somebody could be like a, so it's going to be longer. So the word a would be stretched exactly how it falls about the timeline if you're editing and you actually see the waves and you see the words. So just it's a very, very simple system. And the benefit of that is that right now, currently, if you go online and you type in some lyrics of a popular song, let's say you say Run DMC and you type in the lyrics, and you try to recite it, there's no way that you could figure out how to recite it from just seeing the words written down. Even if they phrase it in a simpler way, like, every bar is one line, or every half a bar is one line, you still don't know which word is, like, was that word that long or shorter? You don't know
Did you double it and then pause and then pause and then double?
The only way for you to know how to say it is to actually have heard the song. But with my system, you can actually recite songs that you never heard before without having to learn classical music notation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is really difficult, because it's really difficult to look at two things at once and to learn classical notation. And classical music people can't even do the patterns that rappers are doing now.
That's what I'm saying, right? And I remember when I wrote, I rap. We all, at some point, when I was, rapping, what I would do is to remind myself that I need to double up in this space and say it quicker, I'd underline it, and then I'd put a slash to say there's a pause. Yeah, my little note. So my own little thing, so I would know. And sometimes I'd write if it has to come in before the one, I'd finish writing it on the top line, and then the one, so little ways so that I would know the cadence and I would remind myself how I'm supposed to say it, in accordance to the beat. So I understand the concept perfectly, but to see it done with such rigor is impressive and important.
On that note, you know what I'm going to do is, because I've always been transcribing things that are like very obscure old school stuff, classics.
Right.
Like I transcribed the lyrics of MC Light. When you say you love me, it doesn't matter. It goes into my head. It's just shit chatter. But the funny thing is I did it, transcribed it, synced it up with her video, with the little cursor going real time, and they blocked it.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, right.
I put out all this work and they block it. So I'm like, okay,
Right.
well, maybe I should just do the opposite. Instead of focusing on, transcribing underground stuff, just go to the top. So I've been thinking about transcribing, Kendrick's They Not Like Us verse, even though it has so much,
Okay.
profanity in it, but still transcribing that, and so people can see all his lyrical patterns that he's actually using and how long each word is. And
That's
so
interesting.
eventually I'm working on making a site that's kind of like Genius, but or any lyric site, but a lyric site that's all based on lyrical transcription methodology, and calling it Lyrical Bank. I started a Facebook page for it, but I don't have a website for it yet.
Got
But
it.
making a lyrical bank, a lyrical repository where rappers can have the transcription of their verse so that nobody can touch it. So
Yeah.
that even somebody does, like, you hear, like with Drake now, everybody's lining up his, lyrics that he's jacked over time and stuff like that.
Right.
Which I'm not against people using references, but it's just about how much you use references. It's like
Sure. The
great.
Jay-Z Biggie debate of all time of how much is homage.
Yeah, to take somebody's, one line. But if you're doing that 100 times and you're,
Right. Fair enough.
Drake kind of overdoes it. So I'm not against
Right.
that. But yeah, so you'd be able to, a repository where people that can actually protect artists, because like
I
let's
think
say
that's
you did
interesting.
MIA, she had MIA, but then Rihanna did
Mhm.
LIA. And
Right.
if you just see the lyrics written down, it looks kind of similar, but you don't realize that the pattern is exactly the same, even though
That's
the words
interesting.
were a little bit different. So
That's
if you
interesting.
actually look them on with using
Mhm.
lyrical transcription methodology, and I'm going to do that in the future, but I think I'm
Yeah.
going to go top down first and maybe just start with Kendrick
Yeah.
and CLIA and MIA. You line them up and say, oh look, it's exactly the same. Rihanna totally stole,
That flow.
MIA's line.
You're transcribing flow in a way. Like that's
Exactly. Yeah, so you can actually transcribe the actual flow, because
Yeah.
right now you can't do that with
That's
any
interesting.
lyrical site. You're just seeing the lyrics, and that's just like having the parts of a computer. It's like,
And
yeah, here's
then
the parts of a computer, but how do you put it together? How does it, which, how long is that word?
right.
How,
And I was gonna say, with some of the, I don't know, some of the surface level criticisms or critiques, say of like an artist like Kendrick, you don't grasp sometimes the complexity of what he's doing,
so many
even though
patterns.
you hear it. Like to see it again, this is another way that you can actually visually represent something, to see the complexity of it in a new way. So I'm all for it. I think it's fascinating stuff. I think anything we do to try to, obviously, like you said, bring hip hop to a higher level, which used to be Double XL's tagline, and I wish it wasn't, because I want to use it all the time. But anyway, I digress. What's happening next for you? Obviously, you gave a little bit of a hint, and of course, where can people see this stuff and just follow up with you about getting instruction, or just adding to the literature, as they say in academia. What's next for you, and where can people find you?
Okay, yeah. So I'll switch the order of those. So
Sure.
you can go to ttm.ninja to find everything I'm doing.
Yep.
So you can go to ttm.ninja. And what's next is actually I've got a 2-year biennial battle called the TTM World Cup. I'm doing that again this year. The past 20 years of my practice have I hate to say practice. I won't say practice, because I feel like practice is not serious. If you're practicing, you're not really serious. So
Okay.
I was
I
saying
know what you mean in the term of like
everybody says practice
praxis.
now
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
a
yeah.
fun word, but
Right.
of my legacy, whatever, everything was it was theoretical. So this next everything was on paper. I was getting everybody's stuff for free. So this next decade, next 50 decades, I'm going to be making physical things. So physical books, physical technologies. Like I've got this BPM protractor right here. I got a BPM protractor where you can, put the protractor on the turntable and figure out the BPM just using the protractor, just figuring out the distance of a quarter note.
Right.
You can figure out the
Very
speed of
dope.
a record, just through
dope.
that.
Interesting.
From the no skip technology that DJ Swamp pioneered, you can figure out, the actual speed. But yeah,
Cool.
so just physical
Things
products,
like that.
books, and
Yeah.
technology softwares, things like that, and also just a lot more transcriptions, a lot more lyrical stuff, because I've done the TTM stuff so much in the past 20 years. I'm going to be
Yeah.
focusing a lot more on the rap element. So with my app, I'll send you a copy of the app. I already have the TTM app out now. It's 100 different modular techniques that you can notate and transcribe and compose. But I'm going to release the rap version of it, where it's
Okay.
100 different rap patterns that you can actually flip. But the thing is, with rap, there's only like maybe 15, 20 patterns that people really use. There's
Interesting.
actually more turntablist patterns than rap patterns, just because records can go backwards and do all types of crazy stuff that the mouth can't
True.
really do. The mouth
Interesting.
can kind of emulate some of the things, and I think the future of rap patterns, like, because right now everybody's on the future, like
Yeah. Right.
all
Right.
these cool patterns that Tech Nine mastered a lot of these patterns in the late '90s, and Freestyle Fellowship and all these people have been doing these patterns. But there's still a whole unexplored world of rap patterns that haven't been done, that
Yeah.
if you look at these patterns in the scratch matrix, where it's like, let's say there's a pattern, this chin machine pattern. I rap as well. A chin
Mhm.
machine pattern where it goes what a da da da, what a da da da, what a da da da, and that's kind of like the some of a lot of patterns that Twista was doing and stuff back in the day.
Okay.
But there's just, there's so many cross referencing where, turntablists get influenced by the rappers. But I
Right.
think the future is that the rappers are going to be a lot more, they're going to be like, wait, all these patterns are played out. We got to find some new patterns. And
Mm.
like, oh, what are these guys doing? I think people are going to start to come back to
Interesting.
turntables and to find the new patterns.
That's dope. That's very interesting. And I think the turntable is, I would imagine the turntablist community is happy that these conversations are happening somewhere, because they're always, you know how the other elements feel. They don't get the shine that they deserve. So I'm glad we got to talk about it. I'm always, intrigued by turntablism as an art. Turntablism is a science. And that's what I think, this kind of bridges those worlds in a really fascinating way. So thanks for finally breaking it down to me, my friend. And
Thanks for having me on.
yeah, of course, and we're in the A, generally speaking, together. So we'll have to link up in real life. And if you have any events or anything locally, let me know and I'll come through.
Word.
All right. All right. Thanks again, my friend, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right. Peace.
All right. Peace.